Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I'm your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. Today, we have an absolute titan of the musical world. For those who may somehow not know who you are, who are you?
Hello, Calvin. My name is Ludwig van Beethoven. I am a composer and a pianist, though I suppose many simply know me as the man who brought the world the Ninth Symphony and that famous da-da-da-dum from my fifth.
A legend indeed. To start at the beginning, when and where were you born?
I was born in the beautiful city of Bonn, Germany. I was baptized on December 17th, 1770, so we usually say I was born the day before, on the 16th.
And what was your given name at birth?
Simply Ludwig van Beethoven.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
I was named after my grandfather, also Ludwig. He was a great man, the Kapellmeister in Bonn, and a singer. My family actually came from Flanders, and the van in our name was a point of pride, showing our heritage, though people in Vienna later sometimes confused it with nobility.
What was your hometown like growing up?
Bonn was a provincial town, but it was lovely, sitting right on the Rhine. It was the seat of the Archbishop-Elector, so there was always music in the air. I remember the smells of the river and the excitement of the court.
What was your family life like?
It was lively. I was the eldest of three brothers who survived into adulthood. My mother, Maria Magdalena, was a gentle, kind soul, the best friend of my youth. My father, Johann, was a singer too, though he struggled with many demons, especially the bottle.
What kind of kid were you?
I was a bit of a dreamer, I think. I spent a lot of time lost in my own head, or else I was stuck at the keyboard. My father was very firm about my practice, so I was often quite serious for my age.
What were your biggest fears growing up?
I worried terribly about my health. My mother suffered so much with her lungs, and as a young man, I feared I might follow her fate with asthma or consumption. And of course, I feared the disapproval of my father if my playing wasn't perfect.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
I always knew it would be music. I wanted to be like the great masters, especially Mozart. My father wanted me to be a child prodigy just like him.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
To be honest, I left school quite early, around age 11, to focus on my music. But I loved the lessons I took from Christian Neff. He didn't just teach me notes, he taught me about philosophy and the great thinkers. That stayed with me forever.
What was your first job?
By the time I was 11 or 12, I was already an assistant court organist to Nefa. Shortly after, I was playing viola in the court orchestra. I had to become the breadwinner for my family by the time I was 18.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
It was probably when I began to improvise. People would give me a theme, and I could play for hours, spinning it into something entirely new. I realized then that the music in my head was perhaps a bit louder and more complex than what others were hearing.
What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
Deciding to leave Bonn for Vienna a second time in 1792. I had gone once before but had to rush home because my mother was ill. When I went back to study with Haydn, I thought it was just for a few lessons, but I never lived in Bonn again. That move changed the course of my entire life.
What was your biggest break?
Meeting Joseph Haydn when he passed through Bonn. He saw something in my early scores and encouraged me to come to Vienna. Having the discovery of a master like Haydn was the spark that lit the fire.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Money was always a shadow over us. My father's drinking meant I had to manage the family finances while I was still a teenager. I had to grow up very fast to keep us afloat.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. Even when I began to lose my hearing in my late 20s, the cruelest thing that could happen to a musician, I refused to stop. I felt I had so much more music inside me that simply had to come out.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel are essential to your success?
I was very particular about my coffee. Exactly 60 beans for every cup, and I counted them myself to ensure the perfect strength. I also loved long walks in the woods with a sketchbook in my pocket to catch ideas as they came.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
Perhaps a simple village organist or a teacher. But really, I cannot imagine a life without the creation of music. It was my breath.
What was your life like before fame?
It was a whirlwind of practice and performance in Bonn. I was a young man trying to prove himself, often staying up late to study the scores of Bach and Handel by candlelight.
How did relationships change after success?
It was complicated. I was often seen as gruff or irritable, especially as my hearing faded and I couldn't follow conversations. I loved deeply. There was my immortal beloved, whose identity remains a secret, but I never married. Success brought me patrons, but it also made me feel quite isolated.
Did fame bring happiness?
It brought a sense of purpose. Happiness is a fleeting thing, but the joy I felt when a symphony finally clicked into place, that was better than fame.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The loss of privacy. People would gossip about my messy rooms or my shabbily dressed appearance. I was even arrested once because the police thought I was a vagrant.
What misconceptions do people have about you?
People thought I was angry or mean because I scowled, but often I was just deep in thought or trying to hear what was being said. I loved humanity, even if I found individual people a bit difficult to deal with sometimes.
What was your darkest moment?
1802 was a terrible year. I went to Heiligenstadt to try and save my hearing, and when I realized it was truly going, I was in such despair. I even wrote a letter, my testament, about how I felt like an outcast. But I chose to keep living for my art.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
My grandfather for the legacy he left, and my teacher Nephi who opened my mind. And of course, the music of Bach. He was the immortal god of harmony.
What was life like in your final years?
I was quite ill, and my hearing was gone. So I used conversation notebooks where people would write to me, but I was still working. I was surrounded by friends and my nephew Carl, whom I cared for very much, even if we had our disagreements.
What were you working on in your career before you passed away?
I was finishing my late string quartets, some of the most personal music I ever wrote. I was also sketching ideas for a 10th symphony.
When and where and how did you pass away, and how old were you?
I passed away in Vienna in March of 1827. I was 56 years old. There was a great thunderstorm that evening, quite fitting for my life, I think.
What's a random fact about you most people have never heard?
I was a bit of a klutz. I was always knocking things over or spilling ink into my pianos. I once spilled water all over the floor of a rented room because I liked to pour it over my head to cool down while composing.
What was your favorite food?
I loved a good bread pudding soup with plenty of eggs. I would break the eggs myself to make sure they were fresh. And macaroni with cheese was a favorite too.
What was your favorite book?
I loved the works of Shakespeare and the poetry of Goethe and Schiller. Schiller's Ode to Joy, of course, became the heart of my Ninth Symphony.
Did you have any known rivalries?
Oh, there was a pianist named Daniel Steibold. He tried to challenge me to a musical duel. I took his own music, turned it upside down, and improvised on it until he walked out of the room. He left Vienna and never came back.
Tell us a story nobody talks about.
I once stormed out on my patron, Prince Lichnowsky, during a storm because he wanted me to play for some French officers. I told him, "There are many princes, but there is only one Beethoven." I walked home in the rain with my Appassionata Sonata tucked in my coat. You can still see the water stains on the paper today.
What's your funniest behind-the-scenes moment?
I loved a good laugh, even if my laugh was a bit too loud for some people. My friends used to say they laughed more at my reaction to a joke than the joke itself. I'd throw my head back and just howl.
What advice would you give people chasing success?
Don't just practice your art, but force your way into its secrets. Art deserves that. And never let your struggles stop you. Let them be the fuel for your work.
Ludwig, this has been truly enlightening. Do you have any closing remarks or stories you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
Only that music is a higher revelation than all wisdom and philosophy. I am so happy that my music still speaks to people today. Thank you, Calvin, for letting me share my story once more. It has been a wonderful afternoon.
That was the incredible Ludwig van Beethoven, reminding us that even in silence, there is a symphony. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Ludwig. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.